Hi everybody, I'm Rhiannon, owner of the Epsom Bakehouse, and coming on today to talk about what type of flour you should use to bake bread at home. And if you're enjoying all these bread making tips and you'd like to know more or get things like recipes straight to your inbox, then you can sign up for my regular newsletter via the link below this video. So today I'm going to be talking about what type of flour you should use when you bake bread at home. And first of all, what do I mean by what type of flour? Well, I'm not talking about kind of different brands or things like that, but more about the different types in terms of the strength of the flour. And here I've got some strong white wheat bread flour. And what that means is, when we say a strong flour, is that it has more protein in it, more protein content in the flour. It's a harder wheat variety, and that protein can help contribute to the structure of your bread, and I'll chat about that in a minute. But generally it's a flour with a higher protein content. Now, you might not use the word strong, you might be using brands that don't use the word strong, but if you're baking bread and the recipe calls for strong white wheat bread flour, then this is what we're looking for, one with a higher protein content. An alternative might be plain flour, and this is usually, and that's a term especially used here in the UK, plain flour is one with a lower protein content, often used for bakes like cakes, biscuits, and things with a more delicate structure that perhaps aren't going to rise as much as a loaf of bread. You might also have things like all-purpose flour, which can be in between with terms of the amount of protein in the flour. So a strong bread flour, I would usually say, is about 11 grams or more, usually about 12 or 13 grams of protein per 100 grams of flour. Whereas a plain flour would be maybe 9 or 10 grams of protein per 100 grams of flour. And an all-purpose flour might be somewhere in between. You might not have any of those terms on the flour that you're using, but it really is important to have a quick look at the amount of protein per 100 grams. If you've got nutritional information on the flour, then have a look at that, the amount of protein per 100 grams. And for bread making, you're usually looking for something above 11 grams of protein per 100 grams. So why does it make a difference? Well, as mentioned, the protein is going to contribute to the structure of your loaf, and a lot of that protein will turn into gluten in your bread, and gluten provides this scaffold to your bread. So you do want a bread flour with a higher protein content to create that gluten and rise your loaf, rise your dough, and support the dough as it rises into a beautiful loaf of bread. So if you're thinking, oh, could I substitute that in for plain flour? Well, you probably won't turn out the same loaf of bread that you were expecting. A plain or lower protein content flour will make a flatter bread. It's not that it can't be used for bread making, but it will make a flatter bread, make a different type of bread. Probably if you're looking to make a loaf of bread that's really well risen, quite a high structure bread, then the plain flour probably won't work. There'll also be differences in, say, the amount of water that that flour will need when you add into the recipe. And you might also be thinking, can I substitute in different flours in the recipe? Well, pay close attention to what your recipe is asking for. If it's asking for a strong white wheat flour like this, then it's white flour in terms of all the bran, the outside coating of the wheat grain, has been removed. Whereas in wholemeal, you'll have perhaps a browner flour that you can see bits of bran still in it. I definitely wouldn't suggest just straight substituting those in a recipe. Although they might have the same protein content, your whole wheat or wholemeal flour, you'll need to add different amounts of water, especially to that recipe, and also treat the recipe, and the process will be slightly different. So just talking there about what type of flour, pay close attention to the type of flour that your recipe is asking for. You're likely to need, when you're baking bread at home, a strong flour, one from a harder wheat variety that has a higher protein content. That is the key thing, the protein content of your flour. So you're usually using a higher protein content flour in your bread. So pay attention to that, and try not to substitute other flours in unless you're going to adjust the recipe. It probably won't turn out the same loaf of bread that you were hoping for. So I hope that helps. It was a little tour of the different types of flour and what that means in terms of their protein content and how that can affect the bread that you bake. If you've got any other questions you'd like answered, do let me know in the comments of this video. And if you'd like more information on bread making, recipes, tips and more straight to your inbox, then you can sign up for my regular newsletter via the link below. As always, thanks for watching. I'll be back with another bread making tip